Jujitsu fighting rules presentation for referees. A referee must have good working knowledge of the rules and experience in the sport of Jujitsu and under the JJF rules. This is crucial to your role as an official referee. Do you have a copy of the JJIF fighting rulebook? How often do you look and read it? To fully understand the rulebook, you must have knowledge and technical understanding of sports Jiu-Jitsu styles. Being a student of the sport, participating in the sport as a competitor, training the sport of Jiu-Jitsu and its disciplines. Knowledge of the role, understanding your role description from your sport about the duties as a referee, your role in a specific referee position during competition, mat referee, table referee, side referee, video referee. Officials have a duty to take reasonable care to avoid injury to participants, and this includes keeping up to date with the rules of Jiu-Jitsu sport, particularly rules relating to safety aspects. Preparation. Always make sure you are prepared for your role as a mat referee, table referee, video referee, side referee to assist the head referee. Preparing your area, make sure it is safe to start the competition. Arrive early, have all your uniform equipment and documents ready before the competition. Introduction to the three parts of Jiu-Jitsu fighting. The actual Jiu-Jitsu fighting is divided into three parts. Part 1 sees the Jutsukas involved in distance combat and controlled atemi attacks with arms and legs. Once a grab has been made, the fight enters Part 2 and hits are no longer allowed. The Jutsukas try to bring one another down with various throwing techniques. Points are given according to how clean and effective the actions are judged. Once down on the tatamis, the match enters its Part 3. Here, points are given for immobilization techniques, controlled strangulations or levers on body joints that bring the opponent to yield. The winner is the Jutsuka who has accumulated the most points during the fight or the one who performed a perfect technique in all three parts, winning by ippon, full ippon. In this case, the fight will end before the time runs out. This type of competition requires timing, agility, strength, and endurance. There are three criteria that atemi must fulfill to be scored. Atemi may be applied to the torso or head, excluding straight atemi to the head. Blow or strike to the body must fulfill the three criteria to be scored. First criteria, it must touch the opponent, but not harder than light contact. In age categories, under 16 and younger, atemi to the head above the clavicle must not touch the opponent. Second criteria, it must be applied with good return. A kick that has been caught by the opponent is not applied with a good return and can therefore score 1 point wazari at best. Third criteria, it must be dealt with. Good dynamic, balance, and control.
Adults Jiu-Jitsu fighting male minus 62 kilograms. With the red belt from Austria, Daniel Trimel. With the blue belt from Italy, Salvatore Luna. The Italian with the better start, but the Austrian with a direct answer, both scoring a point in Part 1. Beautiful throw from the Italian, scoring it on Part 2. And immediately a control technique. Now it's a lot of pressure on the Austrian. He needs to get out of that, otherwise the match is finished by full ippon. And that's right in this moment.
Blue. Blue.
Ippon Part 3 for the Italian,
The winner is
adding up to full ippon.
each other.
Points. The following techniques can be scored in Part 1. Waza Ari, 1 point Waza Ari is awarded for an atemi that satisfies all three criteria but is partially blocked by the opponent, or an atemi that satisfies 2 of the 3 criteria and is not blocked by the opponent ippon, 2 points. Ippon is awarded for an atemi that satisfies all 3 criteria, and it is not blocked by the opponent, and is not awarded a 3-point ippon. Punch to the body, suki, haito uchi, uriken to the head. Kicks to the body, megari front kick, yoko gari side kick. Ushiro gari, outer circular kick mawashi gari, roundhouse kick, ippon 3 points. Ippon 3 points is awarded for a kick to the head. Mawashi gari to the head 3 points. Ura mawashi gari to the head 3 points. That satisfies all 3 criteria and is not blocked by the opponent. It must touch the opponent, but not harder than light contact. It must be applied with hikite hikiashi, a good return. It must be dealt with good dynamic, balance, and control. Engagements in Part 1. An engagement starts when both athletes move towards each other and begin to apply atemi techniques. Only one technique can be scored in each engagement. The priority when deciding which technique is scored shall be as follows. First ippon technique performed. It doesn't matter whether it is 2 or 3 points. First waza ari technique performed. We always look for the ippon if both hits land at the same time and would yield the same score. Both ippon 2 or 3 points, or both waza ari. No points shall be given. Simultaneous actions. Ai uchi. What this means in engagements: first unblock punch, second unblock kick to the head. Red scores first equals. Ippon 2 points. First unblock kick to the head. Second unblock punch. Red scores first equals. Ippon 3 points. Unblock punch plus unblock kick to the head at the same time equals no score. Iuchi. Penalties, fouls, prohibited acts. There are 3 types of fouls and corresponding penalties: shido, chui, hansoku maki. Minor fouls are penalized with shido, awarding 1 waza ari to the opponent. Major fouls are penalized with chui, awarding 3 waza ari to the opponent. Severe fouls. The severe fouls are divided between technical fouls and disciplinary fouls. Severe technical fouls are penalized with hansoku make and disqualification of the offending competitor from the match. Severe disciplinary fouls are also penalized with hansoku maka, but the offending competitor will immediately be expelled from the tournament, losing all fights, medals, and qualification points of the entire event in all disciplines and categories. Penalties must be given by the majority of the referees. If a competitor performs an action that fits multiple criteria for penalties, the most severe penalty shall be given. Penalties, he has some key points of the 3 types of fouls. Minor fouls are penalized with shido, and the opponent is awarded 1 waza ari, mubobi, leaving the fighting area, grip and punch, passivity, wasting time, forbidden action. Major fouls will be penalized with chui, and the opponent is awarded 3 waza ari, disregarding referee instructions, unnecessary remarks, dangerous techniques, applying a dangerous takedown. Severe fouls. All severe fouls are penalized with hansoku make, performing an action with the sole intent to injure the opponent. Unsportsmanlike behavior. When an athlete bites, pulls hair, strikes, or applies excessive pressure to genitals or eyes. Disrespecting the referees and the Budo spirit. Applying forbidden techniques. Passivity in Jiu-Jitsu. Passivity refers to actions or a lack of action that hinder the progress of the match, prevent the development of attacks, or are against the spirit of competition. This can include intentionally avoiding engagement, feigning, faking attacks without intent to execute, or holding grips for extended periods without attempting an attack. Key aspects of passivity in Jiu-Jitsu. Part 1. Avoiding engagement. Deliberately avoiding engaging. In Part 1, atemi attacks and going directly to Part 2 or 3 by grasping the opponent. False attacks. Faking an attack without actually executing it in Part 1. Stalling. Refusing to go to Part 2 while being active in Part 1. In such a case, passivity should be given if the competitors do not progress to Part 2 within approximately 20 to 30 seconds. After such penalty is given, the time will be reduced to approximately 15 seconds. An active competitor can move to Part 2 after unsuccessful attempts of scoring in Part 1, but cannot move to Part 3 directly. This is passivity Part 2. Part 2. When in Part 2, an active competitor cannot move to Part 3 intentionally after unsuccessful attempts to score, this will again be passivity Part 2, but they can move to Part 1, stalling and defensive postures. Holding the same grip for too long without attempting an attack or adopting overly defensive postures that hinder progress. Going directly to Part 3 or applying a false attack with the sole purpose to get to Part 3. Only blocking the opponent's attacks and movement without the attempt of applying a technique. Techniques that hinder progress. Actions that prevent the opponent from developing their own techniques or attacking. Part 3, refusing to engage. Going directly back to Part 2 or Part 1, while refusing to fight in Part 3. When a penalty for passivity is issued because a competitor has skipped Part 1 or 2 or refused to fight in Part 3, the fight shall be resumed in the part where the passivity was issued for. Example, if a fighter applies a false attack to skip Part 2, the fight shall resume in Part 2. Sonomama will be called. A penalty for passivity shall not be given if a competitor seizes an opportunity, example, by catching a kick to the body, without being active in Part 1. However, if this occurs in multiple instances and shows refusal to fight in Part 1, 2 or 3, Shido for passivity shall be issued. Minor fouls, passivity, refusing to go to Part 2 while being active in Part 1. In such a case, passivity should be given if the competitors do not progress to Part 2. An active competitor cannot move to Part 3 intentionally after unsuccessful attempts to score. This will again be passivity Part 2, but they can move to Part 1 and continue to fight. Going directly to Part 3 or applying a false attack with the sole purpose to get to Part 3 will be penalized. Only blocking the opponent's attacks and movement in Part 1 without the attempt of applying a technique, and move to Part 2 will be passivity in Part 1. Refusing to fight in Part 3 is passivity Part 3 and moves up to Part 2. The mat referee will announce mate and penalize the competitor. Wasting time. Not having the uniform and protective gear reset when returning to the starting position on multiple occasions. Not having the uniform and protective gear reset on time, 15 seconds after the reset, the uniform sign was shown. Wasting time on purpose, example, arranging the uniform by taking the belt off, taking off the gloves. Forbidden action, setting actions after mate or sonomama, applying a tame, strikes to the legs, applying locks to fingers or toes, putting their hand or foot in the opponent's face in Part 2 or 3. The following techniques can be scored in Part 2. Wazari, 1 point. Wazari is awarded for a partially controlled takedown. Ippon, 2 points. Ippon is awarded for a takedown with full control and dynamic throw out of the technique. A takedown is where the opponent lands flat on the back side or abdomen and/or chest against the tatami, with torti remaining in a position above or on the same level as their opponent, may be scored in Part 2. Ippon, 3 points, is awarded for submission holds that force a submission of the opponent. Submission holds in Part 2 are not allowed in the age categories under 16 and younger. The following techniques can be scored in Part 3. Osai kami waza, Kansensu waza, shime waza. Ippon, 2 points. Ippon is awarded for effective control techniques announced as osaikomi held for 15 seconds. Wazari, 1 point. Wazari is awarded for effective control techniques announced as osaikomi held for more than 10 seconds and less than 15 seconds. Ippon, 3 points. It is awarded for submission holds that force a submission of the opponent. For age categories, under 16 and younger, if submission holds are executed in a technically correct way, with perspective of submission of the opponent, the referee must stop the match and award the Ippon 3 points. Leg locks are not allowed in the age categories under 16 and younger. An osaikomi, which is held longer than 10 seconds, and ends up with a successful submission will not score a Wazari plus an Ippon. The mat referee will announce Toketa for the Oseikomi and award Ippon 3 points for the submission.
Ready? 2! Mate! Sonomama! Red. Grip. Punch. Shida. Yoshi. 2! Mate! Red, passivity, Shido. Wazari red, Ippon blue, Ippon red, Wazari blue, Wazari red, blue, Ippon 3 points, red, Ippon 3 points. Oseikomi! Tokete! Mate! Hiki Waiki! Time score. Break time. Out. Red, winner. Blue, winner. Ayuchi. Ayuchi. Mate. Doctor. Time. Time. Cancel. Red. Request review. Denied. Passivity motion. Red. Shida. Passivity motion. Blue. Shida. Shida. Can be a chewy. Can be a kasakumake. Shida. Can be a Chewy. Can be a Kasaku Make. Grip. Punch. Red. Shido. Grip. Punch. Blue. Shido. Mate. Red. Forbidden actions. Shido. Mate. Reset your gear. Time. You're wasting time. Warning. Unnecessary remarks to the referee. Can be penalized with Chewy. Red. Dangerous techniques. Chewy. Blue. Dangerous techniques. Chewy. Blue. Dangerous techniques. Could be penalized with Chewy or Kasaku Make. Red. Kasaku Make. Blue. Kasaku Make.